Requirements are a massive part of what a business analyst does every day. We collect requirements, we elicit requirements, we write requirements, we validate requirements, we model requirements, etc. Clearly, if you're going to be a business analyst, you have to master requirements. So let's take a look at them. First, how do we define the term requirement? Well, let's see what a Guide to the Business Analysis Body of Knowledge, published by the IIBA, has to say. It defines a requirement as you now see on the screen. So let's take this definition apart here. The first definition is a condition or capability needed by a stakeholder to solve a problem or achieve an objective. That's great, but what does that mean exactly? Well, it defines requirements partly as conditions or capabilities. These could be conditions or capabilities of a system, or of a business process, a policy, etc. There are a lot of different ways of parsing what conditions and capabilities mean, but I like to think of a condition as a state or attribute of the solution, and I like to think of capability as a function of the solution. I'd also like to point out that these are necessary to solve a problem or achieve an objective. Our requirements generally are intended to solve problems and meet the various goals of our organizations. The second definition is similar to the first, but it's not focused on direct organizational needs. And this is talking about the requirements that exist to meet various types of obligations. In other words, requirements are sometimes in existence, not to help the organization directly, but to comply with regulation, meet the terms of an agreement, and so on. And of course, those goals indirectly help the business. The third definition is probably what most people think about most of the time when thinking of requirements. Documentation of some sort that describes what the solution needs to be like. It's usually how the requirements we gather in the first two definitions end up. All right, so let's tie all three of these definitions here together with an example. Let's say you meet with one of your stakeholders, and she gives you a couple requirements. She says, well, first of all, the system needs to be able to take order requests from customers so that we can realize revenue online. That's a great example of the first definition. It's a capability that the stakeholder needs to accomplish the goal, which is, in this case, bringing in more revenue. She then goes on to say, and of course, since there is money involved, the system will need encryption in line with standards. Well, that might be a good example of the second definition. And then if you leave the meeting and write up a requirements document, or user stories, or entries in your requirement management system, that text is what they mean in the third definition. So all of this is what we mean by the term requirement. Now let's talk a little bit about who's involved in working with requirements.